What's going on, guys? This is Damien from The Lookout, and today we're taking a look at budget and non-budget versions of Starter Frieza. But first, we did a how to play video. In case you've missed it, link is in the description below. This is essentially a part 2. Now, before we start the video, hit that like and subscribe button. We are on our way to 1,500 subs. We've been challenged to reach it by the 26th of November. So we're racing to do this. If you want to help us out, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Now, roll the video. As with all of our videos, let's start with a breakdown. So what is this video all about? Well, it's a deck profile, deck building guide for Starter Frieza. We'll go over various cards and synergies. We'll go over a budget and later a non-budget version of the deck, and I will also present you with some upgrade paths, which is basically my suggestion for like, hey, take this out, put this in, essentially. And finally, we will go over some pros and cons of the deck itself. So let's begin, shall we? Let's talk a bit about the deck. So for people who don't know what Starter Frieza is, it's a hand destruction deck. It's a green hand destruction deck. It's filled with synergies, with like discard from your hand, then the card is played. That's mainly Dodoria. Then when you discard, something happens, or you KO something, or your opponent needs to discard, and then you draw cards and stuff. So there's a whole bunch of synergies in this deck. And once you master them, once you figure out how to properly sequence them, they can yield like devastating results. You can really discard a whole bunch of cards from your opponent's hand once you figure out how to actually optimize your plays. It's one of those decks which is easy to assemble. There's nothing super expensive here. Everything, you know, on surface level is easy and it's easy to understand. But it's one of those decks that's harder to master. So like when I show you the deck and when I show you the cards, you will have a general idea of like, okay, this works with this works with that. But figuring out in practice, you know, like, okay, how far do I push? Okay, what synergies can I use this turn? It involves decision making. You know, it's not one of the highest skills deck like that, not by a long shot. But it is one of those decks that, yeah, it's easy to pilot on a surface level and to assemble, but it's one of those that are slightly, you know, slightly harder to master. Let's explain hand destruction. What's hand destruction? Well, it's essentially forcing your opponent to discard cards. You're destroying their hand. In theory, it is very strong. Like, there were days when hand destruction was the boogeyman of the game, like the days of Cell Surge, where like you would just lose without any cards in hand. But yeah, nowadays hand destruction is quite a bit weaker than it used to be, and the main reason is that it's extremely weak to sideboarding. So your opponent always has like at least 2 hand destruction hate cards in sideboard. If you're playing best of 1, no preset, go ahead, like you'll probably win, you know, not in today's meta, but like you will have a pretty good time. Why hand destruction? Well, cards in hand, they equal combo power, potential negates, win cons. They are precious resources, so your goal is to take them away. The more you take away from your opponent, the more difficult it is for them to fight you. Like, you're taking away their battle cards, fine. They might have like still cards in hand, but when you swing at them, they are minusing combo power. So like they will have a harder time defending. Or maybe you take away their negates, swing for the win. It can happen sometimes. So yeah, that's effectively what hand destruction does. Let's start off with a budget deck. So budget deck will be our foundation for, you know, the rest of this video. And then later we will just go over non-budget options. This was made on DECKPLANET, as you know already, and I'm saying this because here I can see the price. So according to US DECKPLANET prices, this deck should cost you around $62. It should cost you far less if you are from Europe, because European prices are much cheaper. So if you're from Europe, I'm speedballing, it's around maybe 40-ish euros, if not less, for this deck. So let's look at the key cards, key synergies, and everything else for this budget deck. Key cards of the deck. Okay, we went over this in more detail in our how to play video, but every video is someone's first video. So for those who came here first, these are your key cards. Number 1, Frieza's Army Healing Pod. This is your main draw engine. It has an auto once per turn that when you play a green battle card from your drop, you draw a card. Your MVP is Dodoria. Dodoria has an auto ability without any limit on it, which says when you discard it from your hand with a skill, it enters the battle. So you effectively play it for free. And then you can active main pay 1 to bring it back to your hand. Less important right now. This is the core card of your deck, and we will be talking a lot about it in this video. And finally, Dark Broly, Overwhelming Evil. This is my pick for the Unison, your big scary Unison card. You can play the Frieza Unison from the starter deck instead. You can do that. I personally prefer Broly, so I'm going with Broly for this video. So yeah, these are your key cards. I need to point this one out because people would talk about this if I hadn't mentioned it. You can use the starter Frieza Unison instead of Broly. You can absolutely use that one. However, I mean, it's a more of a budget option. If you want to go even more budget, you can use that one. However, I've decided to use Broly instead because I wanted to build a deck that's, you know, tunnel visioned into hand destruction. And I think that Broly is better in this type of a deck. Yes, getting your Unison out turn 2 is invaluable in some situations, and yeah, you can definitely play this guy instead of Broly. I just chose to pick Broly instead because I'm thinking it works with Dabura. It allows you to discard, so if you do Dabura, if you do +2, you discard 2 cards from their hand, but it comes out a turn later, but it's also a 20k double striker, which you can give critical to. So you can give him crit with your leader, and then he is 20k double strike critical, which I believe is far more terrifying than this Frieza Zeno. To fully understand how you can abuse, you know, various synergies in this deck, you need to understand Dodoria. This is your MVP. Dodoria's auto enables your deck to run smoothly. So what's its auto? Its auto is when this is your leader, the Green Frieza, and you have a Unison out, when you send Dodoria from your hand to the drop with a skill, you play it from the drop. And it doesn't have a limit. So like if you discard 3 Dodorias, you play 3 Dodorias. Whenever possible, you aim to discard Dodoria because you're not losing anything. You discard a card and you get a free body, and you get the beneficial effect for discarding a card. And if Dodoria is ever stuck in your drop, you just pay 1, get it back into your hand. This auto isn't, as I said, limited to 1, so it's crucial to keep this in mind. So you need to do something with the rest of your Dodorias, you know. So you just discard them, you get them back, you know, get some beneficial effects and stuff. So yeah, we will go now into multiple examples and synergies with this card. Here is how you draw in this deck. So you need 2 cards, Dodoria and Frieza's Army Healing Pod. Dodoria has an auto effect, which says that if this is your leader, you know, this Green Frieza, and you have a Unison out, when you discard Dodoria, when you send it to the drop via skill, effectively when you discard it with one of your own cards, it plays itself for free. So whenever you can, you discard Dodoria. Then its auto triggers, playing it for free from the drop. And then, once per turn, Frieza's Army Healing Pod's effect triggers, which is auto once per turn. When you play a green battle card from the drop, draw a card. So this is effectively like you discard it for a beneficial effect, it plays itself, and it triggers the Healing Pod drawing you 1 card. But wait, you can draw even more! Introducing Ginyu and Majin Buu Unadulterated Malice, and Dormant Potential in the non-budget version. These are your negates, which have a clause which says you discard a card. Ginyu discards when it enters, Majin Buu discards as a cost to counterattack. So, because Frieza's Army Healing Pod is once per turn, not once per your turn, what you effectively do is your opponent attacks you, and let's say you use Ginyu. You use Ginyu, you negate the attack, you play Ginyu. When Ginyu is played, you discard one. You discard Dodoria. Okay, you discarded Dodoria. Dodoria was discarded by a skill. If you have a Unison in play, which you probably will, Dodoria now plays itself. Because it played itself from the drop, Frieza's Army Healing Pod activates, you draw a card. So yeah, you can actually draw more during your turn, and you can draw during your opponent's turn by pitching Dodoria for these negates. These 4 cards are your Dodoria triggers. So every single one of them discards a card to do something. I mean, Ginyu gets Dodoria back from the drop and then discards it, or it gets back something, but you can discard Dodoria with Ginyu. So all of these cards are super profitable for you, because you get to discard your Dodoria, which then it plays itself for free, which then you can KO with some other effects. For example, Frieza before the fall. Frieza before the fall discards one, and let's say it discards Dodoria, it plays Dodoria plays itself, and then Frieza can KO it to make your opponent discard one. So all of these are profitable. All of these, you know, when they say discard something, you discard Dodoria, and then it's amazing. We went over Dodoria, let's go over Dabura. So Dabura is only in the budget version of the deck. It can be implemented in the non-budget version, but I've only placed it in the budget. So its ability is activate main. If your leader is green, you discard this card from your hand and you choose one of your Unison cards and remove a marker from it. Add up to 1 green Dark Dragon Ball from your deck or drop area to your hand, then shuffle your deck if you look through it. Dabura's sole purpose in the entire deck is solely so that you can use this activate main and remove a marker from your Dark Broly. If you do this, Dark Broly's auto will trigger, because activate main isn't a keyword skill, and Dark Broly says that when a marker is removed from it via non-keyword skill, your opponent discards one. So this is just, and Dabura is here just as like an additional discard outlet. So that's it. That's its sole purpose. The other thing that it does, it gets you the Dark Dragon Ball. Dark Dragon Ball is useless in this deck. I mean, it's not useless, but its main purpose doesn't exist in this deck. Usually, its main purpose is to get you, you know, Frieza Zeno, but we're not playing Frieza Zeno. The other thing that the Dark Dragon Ball does is you can activate battle for 0 to give something plus 5k for the battle. This is gonna be actually very cool. So here is the Dabura chain. Here's the Dabura chain. So here's what you can do. You activate main of your Dabura, removing a marker from your Dark Broly Unison. Because activate main is a non-keyword skill, your Broly's auto triggers, which is once per turn. If a marker is removed from it via non-keyword skill, your opponent discards one. So you discard one card. Okay, your opponent discards one. Then the rest of Dabura's effect goes through, and you grab the Dark Dragon Ball. What happens then is you use your Broly's +2. Your opponent discards one, and you discard one. You discard Dodoria, and you also KO something from your opponent. Okay, you discard Dodoria. Dodoria's auto triggers. Because it was discarded from your hand via skill, it plays itself from the drop, so you play Dodoria. Then Frieza's Army Healing Pod triggers. Because a green battle card was played from the drop, you get to draw one. Following that, you activate main of your awakened leader. You KO the Dodoria. Opponent discards one, and then you target a Unison to give it critical. You target your Dark Broly. Now it's time for combat. You swing with 20k double strike critical. You attack with your Unison. If there are no counters, you activate battle of your Dark Dragon Ball, targeting your Unison, and then giving it plus 5k for the battle. Now it's 25k double strike critical, which is a huge swing. You can also additionally combo on it, but however you look at it, if your opponent didn't counter, they're losing 2 lives. Those lives are going immediately to the drop. And if you get this through, then you just continue keeping up the pressure. The results of the Dabra chain are as follows. Your opponent discarded 3 cards. 1 from Dark Brawl is auto, 1 from Dark Brawl is +2, and 1 from your leader. So that's 3 cards gone. You drew 1 card because Dodoria got played from the drop and that activated your Frieza army sealing pod. So you drew 1, and then you attacked with a 25k double strike critical guy, and if it got through, you dealt 2 critical damage, sending 2 lives directly to the drop. Sometimes you just need to push further. Sometimes your opponent still has some cards in hand, regardless of everything that you did. And this is where like these 2 cards enter. Dark Temptation Towa and Frieza Before the Fall. Dark Temptation Towa is an amazing overrealm in this deck because it only requires 3 cards in the drop. Because you recycle Dodoria so much, 3 is a good cost. Costing like 6 or 8 might be too difficult, but 3 you can expect to have at least 3 cards in the drop. You play Tova, your opponent discards 1. Frieza, I've talked about this in the previous video. You can cheat him out for 1. You can KO your Dodoria or something as active main so that your opponent discards 1. Those are good cards to push even further and discard even more cards from your opponent's hand. And your opponent cannot interact with them, so cannot interact. It's a way to do this without attacking your opponent, because Towa does this on play and Frieza does this as activate main. Lastly, let's talk about the Z deck. Unfortunately, you're playing green, which means that your options are severely limited. These are the 3 cards that you can put into your Z deck. I mean, like 2 plus a very special one. Because this deck recycles so much and you're mainly just putting your Dodoria into the drop and stuff, you're not really comboing as much in this deck. You won't have like a ton of Z energy. You won't be like Gogeta or Sin or even Blue. But you will have some Z energy. And you can use it for Frieza Resurrected Ambition. Well, it requires only 1 Z energy, so that's awesome. And it has once per turn effect, so place 1 of your Z energy in its owner's drop. When one of your green battle cards, other green battle cards, with an energy cost of 2 or more attacks, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So yeah, you will have some battle cards which can do this. So this is just, you know, one additional effect. For example, your Frieza, your new Frieza, which is a 4 cost, when he attacks, your opponent discards 1. That's great, like it's an additional discard outlet. The more important one is SSB Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible. This guy is your Self-Awakener. This deck struggles without Self-Awakeners because your opponent can just play it smart and not allow your leader to get, you know, into a position where it can take its own lives, and then you're just stuck with a useless leader. So you need your Self-Awakeners. That's why you're playing SSB Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible. And last but not the least, the most important card in the deck is our mandatory meme, SS4 Gogeta, the Ultimate Fusion. Because every Z deck needs at least 1 SS4 Gogeta Ultimate Fusion. Now let's move to the non-budget version of the deck. So non-budget version is, according to DECKPLANET prices, $181 US. It's once again much cheaper in Europe, like almost 50% cheaper, definitely. But in US, yeah, it's 180 bucks, and this version is of course much more powerful than the budget one. Let's go over some key choices and key differences. First key thing is that you have more power. You have more power in terms of cells are destroying Kamehameha, which is an insane staple in all green hand destruction decks, because it forces your opponent to discard even more cards. It works as activate battle only on your leader, so you can give 15k to your leader on offense or on defense But whenever you choose to do this, however you choose to do this, your opponent discards 1. So like if you really need to push for more damage, for more discard, then you use this card too. Another power piece is, as you have seen, Dormant Potential, but I don't think that that card needs any explanation. The other big change is Ribrianne. So Ribrianne is a staple card in all green hand destruction decks. It's expensive, but it's extremely powerful, and this is your second discard target. Now you no longer just discard Dodoria, now you have Ribrianne too. Ribrianne says activate main if your leader is green and you warp it from your drop, your opponent discards 2 cards for 2 energy. Sometimes this discard 2 can really help you win games. Sometimes you can just be stuck with your opponent having 2 crucial cards in hand and you have no way of getting rid of them. That's where Ribrianne is extremely useful. It's an extremely powerful hand destruction piece, and yeah, it's expensive, but it's definitely worth it. Finally, what you're getting with this more expensive version is Golden Frieza Newfound Might. You're getting an extra win con. This is probably the best green unison win con in the game. So first off, you need to empower it. But empowering it through, your Dark Broly isn't an issue, because Dark Broly has a ton of markers. It's super difficult to, knock markers from Dark Broly, because the card is huge. Effectively, Empower 4, dual attack blocker, counter attack, you get to play him, he wipes your opponent's board, and he has the activate main, you give him plus 10k and triple strike for the rest of the turn. You can also give him critical with your unison. So you can swing at your opponent. If you discard all of the cards from their hand and they're still on high life, you can just empower this guy in, you can use your leader, give him critical, and now he's 30k dual attack triple strike critical. That's 6 lives in the drop if your opponent can't defend himself. So yeah, this is an extra win con. Now, how do you upgrade from budget to non-budget? Now, this is just a template, this is just an idea. It's by no means, a solid set in stone rule. But what I would do is I would replace Champa Destroys for Cell's Kamehameha. You can replace 1 Dabura, 1 Champa, 1 red Champa for 2 copies of Frieza, definitely. And then you see, you're left with some extra cards that you can replace for multiple copies for Ribrianne or multiple copies for Zamasu. I think that Champa, Cell, Ribrianne, Dormant Potential is a good order of doing this. I think it's an okay order. But yeah, as I've said, these are my recommendations of okay, what do you take out now and what do you put in? It's not set in stone. Please, consider that you can really switch them around any way that you like. But yeah, it is an upgrade path, so here you go. That's it for the video. What did you think of these decks? Let me know in the comments below. But more importantly, this today was an experiment with this new type of content of how to play plus deck profile. Let me know what you think of this type of deck profile, this type of how to play videos, because I want to make more of them, but I need your constructive criticism and your feedback. So please write it down in the comment section below. I read all of your comments, I try to respond to everything, I love our little community. And if you haven't subscribed yet, or someone who hasn't, share this video, hit the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1,500 subs. We are trying to get there by the 26th of November. That was the challenge. And if we can do that, that would be amazing. This has been Damien from The Lookout, and I'll see all of you in the next video.